Welcoming you all to today's Bytes and Brew. Let's all hold a coffee and get started getting started with a social good project discussion. Here I am, Pratika Devi Venkatram, lead at Women Who Code Data Science Community. I'll be the host for today. Here we are. Here we have the speakers for today. The speakers are Lindsey Robertson, the wonderful leadership fellow, Women Who Code Data Science Community. She's also the director of operations and data strategy at ICAR. We have Kalindi Fonda. Kalindi Fonda is working as a software engineer in Bitfont, a federated data science and AI platform. Her journey into tech went through film, online education, and a million other jobs and projects. She explores and learns, believes to be responsible and good in tech. We have the other speaker, Palak Bansal. Palak Bansal is an MS student doing her data science in New York University. She's experienced in software development and data science projects over 3 years, committed to promote diversity and inclusion in tech by her experience. Her credentials includes webinar delivery on unconscious bias. She has presented Empower Project in We 2022, which is an initiative to enhance the communication skills through mentoring to women in tech. This was projected in Society of Women Engineers. Okay. I'm excited to hear more about to discuss about today's topic. And here we are into the session. Over to you, Lindsey.
Thank you, Kritika, for the fantastic introduction. I'm so excited to be joined here with our community members who volunteered today to share their experiences with you. We are going to have this casual conversation. So if you're a participant and you would like to turn your camera on and join us, pretend that we are meeting up for coffee virtually. I know that, but we all have our beverages here. You're more than welcome to join the conversation. But well, to get us kicked off first, I would like to turn it over to our speakers. And first, I'll go to you, Palak. And we'll discuss a little bit about your background and about the project that you came to develop and love over the years, and see what you can share with us in the community about the program that you put together.
Hi, thank you so much, Lindsey. So, like Kritika introduced me, I'm doing my master's at NYU currently in data science, and I have a background in computer science. The program that I'll be talking about today is a personal project that I started during the pandemic. Like I said, it was to mentor women in tech to enhance their communication skills. How I started up with this program is I was trying to find women who have English as their second language, and that presents a whole new different set of challenges that women just face more than even men. So I found these women, and I was just trying to set up conversations like they would have in corporate. In India, a lot of times you can get through the academics also without any sort of English communication. You can get an entry-level job, but once you enter corporate, you need it on day one. And that's something I saw women around me struggling with. I had mentees while I was working, and they had great ideas, and they knew everything they could know with tech because they made it to the job, and it was a difficult interview process they cleared, but they were still not able to share their ideas or opinions. And after meetings, they would tell me, hey, I thought, we could do it this way. But then it's hard to take credit for that work. And I felt like a lot of times it was not the idea or the more than even the communication part of it was the language part of it. They were from a background where they got through college academia for their local language, and it's a different challenge they're facing now altogether. So I just found these women mostly who were in college still, and I just emulated conversations they would have in corporate in these sessions that we met weekly for. So we would have discussions we had one around responsible AI. Once I got this database problem, and I just asked people to come up with a schema, discuss it like they would discuss in a job or in an internship. And similar sessions. Once we discussed data structures, so it was tech discussions, but the tech part was also there, but it was more about, I kept the topics very simple so people don't have to feel prepared or intimidated, but it was just for communication and speaking practice. And I had 15 mentees in and out through the program. I worked on it for 6 months. By the end, a lot of it, I saw the fluency improve, but more than that, people were just willing to participate more. In the first program, my first session, I remember I just had one attendee. So I had to call a friend to attend with us, just to, just not, so it doesn't become a one-on-one. And from there, I went to 10 mentees. And some of them actually saw a difference in their internships or in their, they felt more prepared for the corporate world. So, yeah, I'll be happy to take more specific questions.
Sure. If anyone has any questions right now for Palak, you'll definitely have a chance to later on, but we can certainly move forward while you're thinking a little bit, because we have another project that Kalindi is so kind to be here with us today to share, a project that she worked on. And I'll turn it over to you now so you can give us a summary of your background as well.
So, hey, everyone. Now, when I was thinking about what is a project and so on, I realized we are the biggest projects of ourselves. So, and I like how basically maybe this project that I'm going to talk about is not maybe my biggest project, but it really follows my heart and my interests. So between my last two jobs, I wanted to see, so I believe that tech can really help with conservation and nature and climate, because there's a massive leverage and scale at which tech exists. But I think so often when we're on the computers, we sometimes forget how the real world works. So between my last two jobs, I went for a few short-term projects that worked on location. So one of them was in the Philippines with manta rays, and for that we basically had cameras on the bottom of the sea, took pictures every day, every 5 seconds actually, which means I think 80,000 a day from 5 cameras. And then in the evening we would look through all the photos and say if there's a manta on the picture or not. And so as I was this is one of a very ideal problem for machine learning, is a human looking through a lot of pictures to say if something is there or not. So then when I came back, I figured I signed up for a machine learning course and decided to try to create a project that would like a model that would tell me if a manta is there or not. Then how successful this was, not very necessarily, but I learned a lot on the way. And I think more what I learned from this project is very much how you find a project, how you communicate to people about, because I wrote to the LAMAVE, which is the organization doing the pictures or doing the research on the mantas, if I can use their pictures. And then we set up basically the whole pipeline. And then I realized that that it's very hard to do recognition in underwater, and there's lots more to learn. But this is basically the summary, and I guess we're going to have many questions, so we can start from here.
Wow, that's fascinating. I can imagine what a challenging problem that would have been to do image recognition and computer vision for underwater images. Yeah, I'd love to dive into that more later for sure. Thank you so much for sharing. Definitely from a little anecdote from my end, I feel that having something to give back with and having a social good project is just a really good life balancing mechanism. It provides a lot of value for other people, but also for yourself. And I feel like being here and getting started with Women in Code as a volunteer, and I know the other volunteers can speak to this as well, although it might not be, an open source contribution or, a big project that was created itself, it's a nice step in the right direction. And I feel that, there is a mission behind that you can serve. And to me, that's something that I can look at as a social good project in a way, when we're providing free trainings and free resources and mentorship and guidance to a global membership around the world with maybe not as many resources, it's a rewarding thing. So just from my little anecdotal point of view, I find that to be a really good way to get started as well. Awesome. Yeah. So I know that we have a few members here from the community that have joined us today. And I know that you might not have expected this to be a meeting format, and that's totally fine. And you're encouraged to turn your cameras on and get involved in the conversation if you'd like. And if you're shy, that's totally fine. We can take questions in the Q&A as well. But I just wanted to kind of pose this question to our community members that are joining us. Just to kind of think, and get an icebreaker started so we can get to know one another. I wanted to ask, what is the social issue you're passionate about and why? I'd love to hear people's passions. It's so nice to get to know what people care about beyond, their profession. And because a lot of times we have jobs that may or may not align with, our interests and our passions. A job is a necessary thing, but it's nice to get to know the person beyond that professional function. So if you'd love to share with us, go ahead and, you can unmute and you can talk, or you're welcome to type in the chat. But I encourage everyone to kind of let us know what you're passionate about. And, I'll lead the conversation. I am super passionate about equity and tech, especially for women, obviously. And a driver of that is, economic stability and poverty. I definitely, it's just something near and dear to my heart. And I'd hope to be able to contribute to the advancement of, economic equity for all peoples. So yeah, that's something that I wanted to share. Biodiversity. Oh, that's so important. I mean, I feel like I'm gonna just agree with everybody here, but it's so nice to hear what people care about. Please share if you feel compelled. Is there anyone here that wants to contribute their passions, what interests them as far as social good? And that's fine if you want to think on it a little bit. We can continue the discussion and maybe you'll be inspired. Lacey, thanks for sharing. Mental health is definitely near and dear to my heart as well. I feel like it's definitely tied into a lot of these issues that we like to address. That's the kind of the root of it, is how well we are in our minds well-being. I love that. Thank you for sharing. Okay. And feel free to also share later on if you feel inspired. This is not like a once and done opportunity to share your passions. We definitely love to hear them. So please feel free to hop into the conversation at any point you feel compelled. Okay, well, I guess I will kind of move on with the questions myself. I will definitely leave the Q&A open for the audience, for our community members. At any point you have a question, go ahead and let us know and we'll definitely address those. But I have a few that are on top of mind for myself, actually, that I wanted to kind of steer the conversation towards. I would love to know how you both identified the project that you wanted to work on, and how it, given your skill sets and your abilities, how you identified a project that aligned with those skill sets and abilities. And anyone can take up the question first if they would like.
I can go first. So I always knew that I wanted to mentor women because I was fortunate enough to find mentors. There was a very vibrant women in tech community in my undergrad college, and they influenced my career in a very good way. They told me about how to build your LinkedIn profile, and the fact that I needed a LinkedIn profile, and to just internships, jobs, everything, and just navigating all the resources that are for women, about diversity, what kind of biases we face. I learned a lot from mentors. So I knew that I wanted to give back, and I wanted to mentor young women in tech someday, especially who didn't grow up with a lot of resources. And I had kind of thought that once I develop an ultimate expertise in one tech stack while at work, I will just teach college girls that. But then, okay, it gets a little cheesy here. But in the pandemic, everything seems so uncertain. And I was just thinking about my life goals and what I wanted to do. And this was one of them, that I still hadn't mentored women back yet. And I just realized that maybe I don't have to be an expert. I'll just start with something I'm good at, and maybe I can still make an impact. And communication and English came to be. I saw some other initiative which was doing something English related. And I just thought that I can teach this. I have kind of been on the both sides of English communication struggles. I didn't have anybody really speak around me in English that much till I was 18. And then my college happened to be a very diverse place. So I was just really forced out of my comfort zone to learn that. And I was seeing people who don't get that opportunity, and they are in the they enter corporate world like this if you don't get that opportunity in college. And I was also thinking that with pandemic it's worse, because the communication that you do get in person, and just the in-person communication, virtual doesn't beat it. So it was the right time to start it also. So that's how I found it. That is something I felt very passionately about. I tried to find girls who were going to regional colleges in India where the medium of communication wasn't necessarily English. So I tried to reach students in smaller colleges and ask them to give me contacts for their colleges where I could find people like this. And yeah, that's how I started. I could put myself in the shoes of the participants. So that really helped me.
That's so nice to hear.
Mhm.
Kalindi, how about you?
Yeah, before when you were talking about open source, I just remembered how scary open source always felt to me. Like, especially when I was learning how to program, I was like, oh. And so I think also when looking for a project, like now when we talk about the project, we've already gone through a lot of the stages, so they look much more complete and maybe even meaningful than they look when we start. So I think for me, it's really important to basically find this mix of where I can help and where I can learn. And I think that kind of makes the best ingredients for me, because I see if I just help, then sometimes it's not so aligned with my heart. And if I learn, then I feel guilty that if I just learn, it's like I'm not contributing enough. So I think it's these two things. And yeah.
Great point. Yeah, that's definitely a good consideration. I think that's very relatable to a lot of people that have been there. And with those, considerations in mind of how you kind of discovered what projects might align with your skills and interests, I'm sure it wasn't just smooth sailing right into the start of it. What are some of the challenges you faced in finding your project and getting it started? Do you have any that you can recall?
I can just maybe start because I kind of mentioned it. I think it's interesting when things are not really aligned and you feel like you should do a project, or maybe you think it's an opportunity. So, and then there's all these emotional things like, oh, I don't know enough, or I can't contribute, and so on. And I think that's why, and also just finding projects. I think especially when you're maybe starting out in a field or starting out with a topic, it's very hard to know what you can even do. So I think this is where the importance of community comes in. And sometimes general communities like this for women who code for data science, but sometimes you can also find interest communities. And I think that can really both help you find the project, but also be the emotional and social support.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. How about you, Palak?
Finding participants was a really challenging step in my project, because a lot of times when you're mentoring for technical skills, like a particular tech stack, it's very easy to get participants because people want to work on their skills, obviously. But with soft skills, a lot of times students don't realize how important they are till they actually start working on them, or till they're actually out of college and in the corporate world. So some of my mentees also, I remember one of them, she said when she went to her internship at Amazon, I think, and she just couldn't speak few of the, like, she wasn't able to communicate ideas, or she said something which was, she pronounced it very wrongly, and she said that she had never heard that word, like she'd always just read it, she'd never heard it back, so she just didn't, there was no way for her to know what the pronunciation was. And she had a lot of challenges like that. So a lot of my mentees were who had interned and then come back from their experiences and then realized the importance of the project. But certainly you have to make people believe that they actually need it. So it's hard to find participants. Going back, if I could do it again, I would launch it with communities like Women Who Code, who already have channels set up where they talk about soft skills just in general, and people are kind of aware that they need it. To get more participants going in the first few sessions. My first session had one single participant. I was expecting more, so I was talking about this before, I had to actually plant a friend, and I made her pretend she was a participant just so that my one mentee doesn't leave, because she was particularly struggling with this, and she talked to me before. So it's definitely to, I think with any, and because it was free, with any kind of free service, I had a lot of no-shows. Even when people did find it impactful, I mostly had it like you have to take time out of school, or it was in the evenings or on the weekends. So it's hard to keep people motivated when they're still in school, because that is not a skill you need immediately.
Oh man, go ahead.
I
Go
just
ahead,
want
jump in.
a massive +1 to the supportive friend or friends. They can be a massive thing. Like we don't even need to pretend that they're a participant or so. But I always ask my friends to, I don't know, come to talks or things like this. Not today, I forgot.
That's okay.
That's
I have my
security.
friend.
Nice.
Oh, great.
so-
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
having someone who has your back is really
Yeah.
oh, that's a very powerful point. I think the challenges you both mentioned are definitely relatable on both sides. There's always that mental block. You know, I experienced it myself when I first started volunteering with Women in Code, and I see it in all the other new volunteers that come on board as well. They question their abilities. They're not sure that they're to the level they need to be to make a good, solid, meaningful contribution. It's so relatable, and it's so easy to overcome with a good community around you. You know, yeah, invite those friends, make friends, treat the people that you are volunteering with, you know, like comrades, and leverage, you know, their skill sets and kind of lean into their support, you know, and that's the type of environments you should look for.
Mhm.
Just very welcoming and are willing to meet you where you're at. Otherwise, you know, maybe it's not a safe place and that's not a good place for you to grow. We definitely have to challenge ourselves and put on a strong face, you know, in our professional lives. Find an open source or find a personal project where you can be your true authentic self and you can really let those vulnerabilities come out. That's great points. I love where this conversation is going. I just wanted to make sure the audience has a chance to ask questions. I see one here in the Q&A. Thank you, Lindsey. This is such a fantastic question. I actually have it on my list here. And we are definitely going to get to the question about measuring success. And the next question I had, I think, is kind of going in that direction. Before I ask that question, I want to kind of pose a question to you both of how you feel that your particular skills made impact. And I think you both kind of touched on that already. But whether it's the soft skills or the technical skills, is there something that you can pinpoint that was a strength within yourself that you know gave you the ability to make impact?
So like you said, it was soft skills for me. It was majorly, so it was very hard to stay motivated when doing these kinds of personal projects. But because I knew the amount, just the size of impact I can make, that really kept me going. So having not just having been in their position and how much it could affect their career, I think that really empathy, I would say, is the skill that was most important for me. Because like you said about friends, a lot of times my friends didn't just come for one sessions, and then when I moved my program to kind of group sessions, people just didn't participate or talk. So I had to again get my friends to participate and get people to talk. And like I instructed them that if somebody says anything, just ask a ton of follow-up questions and throw some easy questions at people who aren't speaking at all and things like that. So it was a lot of effort, and it's not always, you don't see any direct rewards. So you definitely need a lot of empathy to motivate you for such projects.
Great point. Great point. How about you, Kalindi?
So for, I think, so I think with how do you measure success with a social good project? It's always depends like what the goal is, right? So if, because when we started a startup with some friends as well, and the goal was to do something about the transparency of the supply chain. So the goal there was also, again, like customers. But then for example, for the Manta project, it was a very time bound experience. I gave it 2 weeks basically for that time. I'm still hoping to continue, but it's basically, my goal was just to have it run, have an opportunity to talk to people about both the problems with the mantas, but also like how people in tech have this power and responsibility to do good, and also how sometimes places that really need the technology have like maybe internet connections problems or electricity connections. So I think it's depending on the project you have. It has really specific like measures of success, and I think this is also where your heart comes in, which is like, okay, what is success for this?
Yeah.
I think I answered.
I think so. Yeah, definitely. Did you have anything to add, Palak?
For personal projects, it's kind of difficult to get numbers on it as such to evaluate success, but I could observe also my mentees, the number of people I had in the starting and in the end. That's definitely something you can always ask for feedback. And just another thing that I would suggest to kind of stay with that success is to document your work as much as possible, at least with personal projects. I had made it a point to make a blog series out of it. So I created it as a task in my project itself. I made my mentees themselves write the blogs, and it was a part of the program that it was not just verbal communication, but written communication as well. And it was implemented into the design. And till today, you can have something as a proof, or to just prove success or to prove impact. You have that documentation after this program was like 2 years or 3 years back now, and you can still talk about it. If you have it documented, you can submit it in places like this, talk about it still, and this also makes impact after you have done it. So that's just one thing I would recommend.
That's such a good
Documentation is important.
Such a good recommendation. Yeah, I'm so glad you thought about that. Absolutely. Just make a good habit of doing that. It's a good reminder for me as well. Yeah, if I could just kind of elaborate more on that question that Lacey mentioned to the community, especially with regards to how it might be different than measuring success in enterprise. There are a lot of overlaps, actually. You start with a problem statement. You start with a very specific goal in mind, right? And the problem statement and the context and the scope of how you're going to solve that problem. And enterprise, usually, you're working to either meet the needs of a stakeholder or a customer. But in the social good project, you're hoping to, garner adoption from a community and make impact in that community's lives. So there's a lot of similarities, but I think where the differences and those metrics I'm referring to are adoption and buy-in. And you're going to see that both in enterprise and in the social good project. But I think the main difference that I see in measuring success is if you are able to see a positive change, either in yourself or the community that you're aiming to serve. And just feeling, like I said, bringing that balance to your life. Once you start feeling that balance because you are able to give back, I feel like that is a really decent measure of success as well. But to put metrics to it, I think adoption and buy-in are probably the best places to start because, like you said, Palak, there's not really a lot of good metrics you can use. When you're doing a social project, it's really rough, from the get-go. But I think a good starting point is how you feel within yourself. Not sure. Like to add, yeah.
Yeah, just one comment on I think measurements are always like difficult topic, like even with companies, like if you go against money, do you mean that your customer is maybe less happy because they're more addicted, I don't know, to scrolling? So, and even, for example, I've talked to quite a few funds in that fund biodiversity projects, and then they say, oh, maybe how many square meters of land protected is a good measure that people like to see, but it might not show the quality of the thing. So I think when it is a social good or good, we really have the benefit of like listening to our heart, as cheesy as it sounds.
Totally agreed. Yeah, and looking for the positives, like that factor, that light that you put out there, you know, as cheesy as that does sound as well.
One thing good about social good projects is that you can always go. So you mentioned mental health. You can always go to the experts in the field and ask them. And when you talk about a social good project, people are more willing to help you. They will take. When I talk to experts and other people who had worked in the field for my projects, even people who had very busy schedules took some time out of their schedule to help me because it is for social good. That is one of the advantages of doing a project in the field. So you can always try to find people who have done something similar and ask these very specific questions there, how to measure success, how they did it for their own programs, and people would be very likely to help you.
Agreed. Yeah, very good point to mention. Definitely. Since we've been talking so much about getting started, there's lots of different avenues you can take. You can contribute to open source. You can start your own project. I wanted to talk about some of the pros and cons, or some of the benefits of creating maybe a personal project on your own versus trying to pull a team together or trying to join an open source contribution. I don't know if there's anything we can add to that conversation to provide some perspective.
I like the together everyone achieves more team, and also a team is more than just a sum of their parts. So I think working with a team is a really incredible experience, like especially if you find people that care about the same thing or a similar thing or so. But I think there's also the other hand of teams is that sometimes you need to compromise what you really care for, because even though, let's say, you care for a very similar things, maybe they like in with my this group I mentioned before, we all wanted to do something for climate, but then we decided to work in fashion, whereas for me it's nature. So it's really interesting how even when you have a team, there might be some discrepancies. So there's this power and heartbreak that comes with teams. Yeah,
very true.
For personal projects, I would say the pro is that, so when I thought about this project, I think I just started it and I just got started with it in like a month or two. So you can just, I mean, if you don't have a team, or if you're in that kind of situation where you just really want to do something, but you don't have the resources to set something up so far, and you have a very rough idea. When I was starting the project, I designed the sessions later. I just had a very, very rough idea of what I wanted to do, and I just started it by myself. And then as I needed help, I asked some friends to help, or I got volunteers. So if you're in a kind of situation and your cause aligns, personal project would just help you get started. I want to do a open source project myself, and my second project would now be in open source when I have more bandwidth and a team. Personal project, the pro is you don't really have to, you want to do something, you just do something. It's something like that, and it gets you started really well. I think my project led to a lot of networking opportunities. I got to spoke about this exact project at the Society of Women Engineers conference. And then here, and I think I got the scholarship to attend GHC earlier this year. And I think I spoke about this project a lot on my application. So, and I did it by myself, so I didn't really have to wait for an opportunity. That is something about personal projects. But the cons, like I said in the beginning, are it's very hard to stay motivated by yourself. And it's hard to keep going, and you have to really find something you very much care about. The logistical organizing can sometimes be very time taking, which happened with me. So if you want to do a personal project, I would suggest still do it in with some community. There are communities. When towards the end of the project, I was talking to somebody at an NGO, and they said they have like 2 programs every quarter, and they would like to run my program on their with the in collab with their NGO. So they would do the publicity parts and just the designing and everything, and I just had to focus on the session. So if you can be somewhere in the middle, be affiliated with a large team, but still get started early, that would be ideal.
Can I add one little thing? So,
Of course.
and I just want to I really like this point about just starting, because I think that's what it is, and it always looks more polished from the outside. So what might look like a really elaborate project to you now, for us was just this, like, you scramble and Google something and make some calls or so. So yeah, just starting is very important.
Absolutely. And I want to kind of dive into the darker aspects of staying motivated, like you've all mentioned, and finding buy-in, and then also maybe there's great aspects of being in a team, but then also there's letdowns as well. People that don't follow through and don't help you drive your mission forward. There's a lot of common pitfalls, such as the ones I just mentioned, but are there any that are top in mind for you when contributing to any project, whether starting your own or contributing to a project? Are there some common pitfalls that you would like to advise our members here today on maybe trying to guide themselves through, just to be on the lookout for? Something I can think too of as feedback, being able to take feedback, take criticism and take feedback without taking it to heart, without letting it kind of get you down and thinking that, you're not going to be able to accomplish your goal. Integrating maybe negative feedback is something you might run into, especially when, you go to those community members or the stakeholders of your project that you're trying to make impact with, and they're not really receiving your solution as viable or something. That's something that I can think of, definitely not letting it be a setback, I think would be something that to think about going into it, but not to let it discourage you.
Yeah, I was thinking about the wider concept, which is just communication, like being proactive about talking, especially if you work with someone else, about what are the expectations, what are the values. I think it's interesting that at the beginning of this call we had the values and mission of because it's what drives everyone, and when you're aligned on some of these things, it can really help. And then I think workload, I think especially if it's a part-time project or so, we need to be real. So this is like communication with yourself. We need to be realistic about how much time we can, or what we can do, or what others can do, so to have some like understanding that we can't do everything.
Yeah. One thing I can think of from what Lindsey said is to stay motivated. I remember after I mentioned getting no-shows a lot specific to my initiative. But what helped me this one time was I was following, she's a data scientist, Fonda. She has a massive Instagram following, and she was talking about how even she gets no-shows, and she was helping women of color negotiate salaries. And she has obviously a lot of expertise in it, and the slots are really hard to get. They go out in 5 minutes. And she still had no shows. People didn't show up to the extent that she stopped doing free sessions altogether. So maybe connecting and following people who are doing something similar but on a larger scale in the field could keep you, when they talk about their challenges, it can, because I felt really relieved about the no-shows after I saw her talking about it. So if there are opportunities like that where you can follow people who are working in the same field, it helps.
Great considerations. Those are all fantastic. That's why there's such a power in community coming together to have these discussions. It's so nice for perspective really is. I have another fantastic question here from Lacey. Have you ever been bailed on a social good project? Maybe it wasn't having the impact you hoped with a partner or other people that had joined?
So I actually had to shut my program because a couple of my mentees just graduated, and they did inform me like an hour prior to the session I had planned. And because this was a project where I can't take a ton of people on board, because I also need to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak, because that's the point. So I had like a close group of 5, and we met for 1 hour, and that just gave everybody enough time to talk. But yes, that did I had to stop it, but you have to figure out how to just work around it. I plan to restart it once I graduate, and this time with a community, like I said, to ensure that I get help that I need in these aspects. And there's always more people wanting to join, getting like not finding people one by one. I interviewed all the participants independently. I sent out Google Forms in like 100 of groups independently, which was not the most efficient way. But yeah, it does suck. And it happens. I mean,
It does.
yeah.
This is a really good question. I think we don't talk about quitting as much as we should, quitting or stopping or even giving up in the positive sense of things. I mentioned the heartbreak before, because this is, I guess, what happened with the startup. We started with with 4 teammates, like with friends, and at just some point I realized it's not in the sphere that I care enough about, and so it was a lot of like what you research, what kind of things you learn on the job, all this on the job or project, like all these things kind of go into these decisions. So it was quite a like, it's a painful moment, especially if you like it or if you like the people you work with, and it's also a painful moment even if things are not working out. And I think there's a lot of processing about also your skills or capacities, but I think it's very normal to move on and go the next step, or realize that something else works better for us or might work better for us. So
Very true. Yeah, that's definitely synonymous with any partnerships you get yourself into, right? Is priorities change, pressures of life come and go. The time that you have in your bandwidth to contribute, may fluctuate, and you might find yourself being on that side of needing to bail at sometimes too. And I feel like is the more that we can use that skill of empathy that we might have within us, to have empathy for yourself and for the other people, and just realize that this is actually part of the challenge of pulling these types of projects together, going into it knowing that, it's maybe it can kind of help lessen the heartbreak a little, or relieve that pressure from yourself. But there's definitely some good points that you brought up, Kalindi, about communication. And I wanted to kind of just think about, just in the last few parts of this talk, what kinds of tools, either technical tools or communication tools and collaboration tools, are super helpful, and maybe some things that you used in your projects that could help work through those challenges.
I think it's always interesting how there's all these like options and opportunities and things that we can work with, and like there's Slack or Discord or even WhatsApp groups, and then you have like Miro for making all this brainstorming with people that are like not here or even here, and then one thing we were going back and forth with in some group project is which presentation tool to use, like with the slides, with the slides from Google, slides from Apple, slides from Microsoft, and then everyone has the thing they like the most. And then at the end, it's just you just see what's the most useful thing for the team to work with, either things that you're used to, or things that work well, or maybe things that are like, for example, Zoom works really well for giving presentation and having quite a lot of control. So maybe control in terms of like how big is your window and so on. And so that might work well for you, but maybe if you work with a lot of like government organizations, I think they still have lots of teams. So maybe it's better if you learn to use the tools of the people you interact with.
Yeah, free preferably too, right? You know, as long as you can. Definitely. Good points. And it's overwhelming. There's so many tools out there. It's kind of like decision paralysis a little bit sometimes. Do you feel it's super important that things like we going back to the documentation being so super important? What are some of the great tools out there for documenting? My go-to is usually just, you know, a Google Drive and GitHub. Is that sufficient when you're getting started, you find?
Yeah, sorry. I was just gonna say that, yeah, sometimes Google Docs is the best thing, or just like Docs. Like you don't need to have some elaborate app, and just writing it out works. But yeah, I think
Absolutely.
simple is good. Shout out to Notion also, who always get me to try to make all these like little pretty things, but then I go back to Google Docs.
I do the same thing. I really want to adopt Notion in the way that I've seen people do it so powerfully. It's a really great tool. I just feel like there's so much functionality sometimes. It's just like, go back to the basics. I'm so guilty.
So I used a lot of Medium because I wanted to not just documenting, but I wanted to create something publicly presentable. So this is my blog. And I used Canva a lot. All the designs, I made them by myself and just like put things together up there. It's really easy to create catchy designs there. So Canva and Medium were what I used. And I have the recorded sessions. All of my sessions were recorded. I still have the Zoom recordings. Going back though, I would really like to get some kind of system which assigns deadlines, because a lot of times I had to follow up with my mentees about blogs that who was supposed to collaborate and when the deadline has passed, and I had to personally keep track of that. So something as simple as setting up a team calendar would have been really good, with all the deadlines clearly marked and all the tasks set up. It was a small team, but otherwise some kind of ticketing system would also have been nice. And yeah, hopefully for the next project, I would definitely use calendar a lot more.
Very good point. Yeah, and that kind of gets touchy again based on, you know, when you're doing these volunteers towards the projects. It's like, is it okay to set deadlines? Is it okay to expect things out of your teammates or even yourself, you know? And that's a very tricky thing to approach, but I think it's a good, important thing to do. And I think anyone who shares your vision is going to be on board with that. Really good point. Some other things I was thinking about too is if you're working on a public interfacing product, you know, the blogs are fantastic resources. Of course, it helps with documentation and it helps with exposure and adoption as well. But if you're working on some functioning product, are there any design tools or any hosting tools that were especially effective when needing to get your product out and in production?
I use the Google Suite and the Google Cloud just because everything is there and it's relatively easy to set up. And also for the Manta pictures, I think we had like 20,000 pictures and each one was 2 megabytes. So that's a lot of, that's big. So then it was just like moving around Google Drive to GCP. And so I felt that the things that are on offer are relatively easy to set up. So it's, I think initially there's no need to worry too much about what we use, but just get started, as Palak said before.
Absolutely. And start designing with the user in mind as well too. I think that's always a good thing to do. We can all kind of have our own, you know, goals and pie in the sky vision of what you'd like to achieve, and just try to keep focus on who it is you're hoping to serve and design with that in mind. You know, a lot of the reason why we wanted to bring this talk together today was because this month we're doing the Hackathon for Social Good. And that's a, you know, track-wide global event for women who code, and I know that a lot of people are participating in that. And if you are here, definitely let us know your thoughts. There was a fantastic workshop that was put together and is on the YouTube channel now, and also on the Hackathon website, where you can access that. And we dive into in detail on how to do those user-centric designs and those the tools that are available for you that are free or open source to get started with. So I'd love to place that link in the chat here for you as well. And I'll definitely be providing some other resources and links in the chat that you can follow. But please feel free to ask questions. We have about 5 minutes or a little more if you need to address any of your questions you have for us, or your fellow community members that have wanted to get started on something like this. The goal here is just to empower, inspire, and get more people involved in these types of social good projects. I'll open the floor up for anyone who wants to participate. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to find the link for the hackathon workshop as well.
I made little notes before today's meeting, and there's one thing I would just like to mention, which is role models, because it was something that I found it really maybe hard initially to know. Also, you just don't see that many women in tech or so, let's say. And then when I think it's so important to see the role models, and then maybe also understand that they're humans and kind of work back from that. So it's like, if I want to be like that, what do I need to do? Like, what are some steps? And I think this really helps me kind of just know the next step, and also make things more real.
Yeah, having
very good
female role models is so different, because it helps you believe in yourself that the goals are more achievable somehow when they inspire you on a deeper level.
Absolutely. I was kind of kicking around ideas for our next Bytes and Brew a little bit ago, and I thought, yeah, I think mentorship is another good place we could take this. Just being inspired from your talk, Palak, and then from just the constant need I feel in myself to need people to learn from, and to kind of that needs to be a role model in my life. I feel like we're always looking where we want to go next, how we want to grow as professionals and people. And it's nice to have a target and a vision in mind. It's someone you can follow, so I kind of love that idea. Good consideration.
I also want to add on to what Lacey asked earlier about impact and just people bailing and everything. One thing I want to say, just the fact that you've started a social good project has an impact. If you see someone having empathy, that also deeply inspires you. I am sure all my mentees, regardless of how they were helped in their communication skills, they saw me as a mentor, and they would in future maybe consider mentoring somebody more than they would have before the program. I myself decided to get into this because I saw my seniors, my mentors, having so much empathy that it's like a chain effect. So if you show empathy towards other, it's just going to grow. So leaving the metrics and everything out of it, just having the initiative, you've already created an impact.
Oh, such a good point. Yeah, definitely. The fact that you're here today, curious about this is definitely a good sign. We definitely hope that you can feel free to reach out to us as well in the Slack community. That's what it's for. I'm always open to DMs. You can find us on LinkedIn as well. I definitely love meeting people that have this curiosity and passion, and just are constantly thinking about what else they can do outside of their professional life with their skills. So there's some fantastic links in the chat here. I'm also going to compile all the links that you've seen here in this document that's accessible to everyone, if you wanted to later on check all those out for yourself. But this session will be recorded, and you'll have access to this document indefinitely. So once again, feel free to ask any questions that we can answer. Reach out. I'll give it just another moment here in case anyone's shy, but I think that this conversation has been really constructive. And I wanted to just thank our community members and our volunteers here this morning that wanted to share their experiences. Thank you so much, Palak and Kalindi, for being here with me. So much appreciated, and I know our whole community will benefit from it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is really nice.
Yeah, thanks. And let's do it. Whatever it is.
Just get started, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of their day and a restful one. And I look forward to seeing everyone again next month at our next session.
Mhm.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.